Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Dropping the Hammer Racing Hour. I'm Alex Gray, along here with Michael Klein, and our special guest, Mr. Zachary Tinkle, an ARCA Series driver. Zachary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Now, for those of you listening later, I had to go back and do a second take of that intro because Streamlabs did not pick up the Discord audio at first, so I had to quickly run in and fix that, so you may hear some editing later, but just a quick heads up there. But anyhow, Zachary, you were talking about, before I realized the mishap, you were talking about moving to Chicago, growing up with karting, and basically like how it built to where you are today.
Yeah, so we first started going. We had moved to Chicago, and for my dad's job, and so we were in Chicago, and I'd always wanted to race. So first, we lived in Indiana in a little-known town called Greens Fork. My dad got a job offer. He moved up to Chicago, and we found this go-karting place called Chicago Indoor Karting, and found this place where you could go rent a go-kart, go around the track a couple times, and I caught the bug, and I started running there, and I ran their championship for a year. I ended up winning it, and then I started mini cups in 2014, and so this time we had our own car, and we were actually maintaining it when I had gotten into mini cup racing. And for me, my parents did not come from a racing background, and we were in a lot of ways a fish out of water, trying to learn on the fly. My dad and mom had really never changed oil in a car, so we were learning at the track, learning how to fix the car and get it onto the racetrack. So for us, it was pretty good. We learned a lot real quick, but it wasn't easy. But we eventually, that's how we got started.
All right.
Yeah, you talk about that, and it's like I can kind of draw some parallels with that too, because I obviously don't come from a racing family either, and it was like when we first got into it, we just found somebody in our area who was selling a go-kart, and parents decided, what, let's finally give them the chance to go race and try this out. And what happened was we show up there, first race, and we're just in our Dodge Caravan with a small wooden flatbed. I feel like we got some pretty interesting looks from that, but my dad never really worked with cars or anything like that before, so we were just kind of trying to pick everything up as we went. And obviously there were struggles, but it's like you kind of learn from them, and that's what really led to success for us.
Yeah, just kind of, as you mentioned, it's just, getting into it, and as, you had to learn quick in that sense, especially my parents and especially me, but you know what, I wouldn't change it for any other way, so I'm really glad for it.
Oh, that is pretty cool. And obviously you said you're pretty much very familiar with the Chicago area.
Yeah, I lived there for about 6.5 years in the Chicago area in a place called Park Ridge.
Okay.
My dad literally worked across the street from where we were, so
wow.
It was a very easy commute for him where he just had to walk, so it was a really good place. Unfortunately, the street he walked across wasn't always the best street, so he had to play a bit of with dodge, human dodgeball, dodging the cars, but it worked out pretty good. And then I moved back to Indiana in 2018 to where I currently am now in Speedway, Indiana.
Man, so right by the Speedway, huh?
Yes, we are. We're literally less than a mile from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is really cool. And so, we didn't actually even know until after I started racing, but we found out I wasn't the only guy in the family that actually had raced, but a distant relative, my great-great-grandfather, his name was Harry McQuinn, and he actually got to compete in the Indianapolis 500, and my dad heard about him in the family, and didn't know much, but so ever since we've been doing all this research on Harry, and just found out like he'd ran the Indy 500. He got a best finish of 7th place twice, and he was even the chief steward from 1953 to 1960. And apparently, if anyone in the racing industry is familiar with the name Donald Davidson as the now former historian of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we had met Donald and just kind of didn't know about Harry, and we actually found out that Donald was the person that Harry basically introduced him and took him around Indianapolis Motor Speedway when he first came over from, I think it was the UK, to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So it's been a really cool thing to find out, kind of since I've been racing, kind of finding out more and more about my great-great-grandfather ever since he started racing.
Wow, that's incredible.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Just when you find out you've got some racing family you didn't even know about. Last year, when we were watching the Chili Bowl Nationals, I noticed somebody in the field named Whit Gastineau, and I was like, oh, that's weird. That's my mom's side of the family's, main name was Gastineau. Like, a lot of our relatives are Gastineau. And so I just brought this up to her, and she goes, is he from Oklahoma? And I say, yes. Well, then, yeah, we're probably related. So found out I wasn't really the only person in my family who was a racer either.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to find that out in a way, because it's like, hey, I'm not alone in this, in a way. And, actually we've gone through all this. So my dad's also been like doing ancestry and just trying to find our side of the family, because that side of the family kind of don't know who all was where for various reasons. I won't. It's a very long story, but but it's been so cool, and we actually found this old cabinet that's now in our house. This old cabinet, and we found this person who knew Harry back in the day, and Harry gifted them this cabinet that we have, and so we met this person. Now she's like much older, but it's been passed around hers. But we found out it was Harry's, and so we went and got it, and now it's in my house by my front door. So that's something really cool to have something in our house that's part of that was Harry's. So it was that's something pretty cool.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. It's sometimes it just works out that way, and it's like, oh, no wonder why I got into racing.
Yep, sometimes it might just be in your genes and you not even know it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So going from Mini Cup, what came after that? I know you ran some CRA stuff, I believe, is what I heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after Mini Cups in 2017, we kind of used as a bit of a transition year where we were running full-time in Mini Cup still, but then on the side I was being a test driver for in a pro late model for Lore's Motorsports. So I basically spent most of 2017 testing. I think I did over 3,000 laps worth of testing just at a local track there at Grundy County Speedway. It was closest to us, closest to the team, so it was pretty cheap to run, and we did a lot of laps. So, and I think that made me learn a lot, where it was like the main thing it was teaching me so much about like running on used tires, and like one time we put 300 lap old tires and had me run, they were 200 laps old tires, and okay, make them last another 100 laps. And it was things like that taught me a lot from the beginning. I felt like I've learned a lot from that was very instrumental in me going up the ranks. And after 17, I did that. I did 18, my rookie year in CRA Late Model Sportsman with Lore's. It went pretty good, all things considered, and I got I think 5th or 6th in the points. And then in 2019, we created my own team with my own car. In 2019, then we ran the CRA Late Model Sportsman again, and then I ran the Anderson Speedway Championship, running for Rookie of the Year of that. Initially, we were actually not supposed to run that full time, but we ended up being able to, thanks to a couple rainouts. But we had a really good year in 2019, and we won we won the Anderson Championship, we won the CRA Late Model Sportsman Championship, and then we won the CRA Late Model Sportsman Triple Crown. So it was a really good year for that, and I feel like that was the year that kind of put me on the map. And then in 2020, we moved up to a pro late, and we ran kind of sporadically in the CRA Jegs All-Stars Tour in 2020, and then 2021 before I got in ARCA.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. And you mentioned testing at Grundy County. That's where I tested the late model for club. So yeah, and that's where I raced the midget for the most part. That's kind of the series home track. So it's a nice track. I love being able to race there. Just a lot of room to race, and in a late model, it's so fun to race.
Oh yeah, it's definitely really fun.
I've not raced there yet.
Yeah. When you ran, did they switch over to did you run the 10-inch tire or the 8-inch tire? I think they might have switched. Yeah, I remember them switching or one of the other recently.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what we ran. All I know is that they were old as hell.
Yep.
Yeah, very, very old tires. Something that when I run the next gen car in iRacing, that's something I need to work on, and that's just, the sim. Like, I'll be like 20, 30 laps into a run, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't turn the car. But yeah, being able, especially to work with worn tires, being able how to handle tires, I think really helps and goes a long way.
Yeah, main thing is for me, actually, I didn't really use the simulator a whole lot when I was driving. For me, actually, I felt like the sim really didn't matter much as correlation. iRacing's kind of more different, where it's more based on how much, and it does matter a little bit, but there's kind of an overemphasis on it. Where it's how much steering input you have versus throttle. So if you have more throttle and more steering input, it will wear the tires more, but which most time that works. But then there is times where you're doing the opposite, where you have more steering input, but you're using more throttle. So you're actually using the throttle to turn the car. It actually tends to wear the tires out a little bit less. It's a fine art. You can't go opposite of one way, too far one way, too far the other. It is a fine art to get, but iRacing, it never really correlates from what I've seen.
Yeah, I found that from when I drove, a super late model for real, and then when I got back on iRacing, when it came to the handling and everything, I did see the similarities. I definitely could see that. The tire wear is kind of hard for me to really gauge, just because, we did 40 laps before I spun out and we ended the day. It's so hard to get it down, to translate it from, reality to sim. Right. And so that's something I don't really want to get too much on iRacing for that, just because it's such an art to really get down. But it's like, at the same time, it's something that you kind of have to learn just by doing it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's the main thing for me. It's like I do use iRacing quite frequently, but for me, the iRacing's a little closer on the ARCA side, but the tires, they behave a bit more like the radial tires do if you're on ARCA. Because the other thing in iRacing is, especially in late models with a bias ply, it is so hard to get heat initially into the tire, and you never really see that in iRacing, where you can just go instantly because the tires act like even though they're cold technically, you have the same or similar amount of grip. So, and that's actually part of the reason I think the tire model is different, is that it's less temperature sensitive, and that it's more, getting them in the right temperature window. So that was the main thing for me, was like for getting the tires, not necessarily preserving the tires, but getting them heated up. just to do a qualifying lap, because when you're doing a qualifying lap, you gotta be to get them heated up. You've kind of gotta be a lot of times the opposite of smooth. You gotta throw the car everywhere to get heat in the fronts and make sure it will stick going into the turn one. But yeah, it's definitely, there's some little nuances there, but it is a pretty good learning tool though.
Yeah, for sure. So, just kind of going from, the late models, the pro and super late models to ARCA, what was that like? And how did that deal with Peterson first come about?
Well, kind of in a little bit just by chance. So in 2021, I had we had our family late model team. It was, me running for JEG CRA All-Stars Tour. We'd run most of the season. And my dad, unfortunately, he's had a stroke. And so we literally had to sell everything to pay his medical bills. So we had sold off like our trailer. Pretty much we were in the process of selling everything off. The only thing we weren't going to sell was like one chassis, because that was the championship winning chassis, and but we had taken the engine stuff out of it. So it was kind of, selling everything off just to pay his medical bills. And that was when Wayne called. I had met Wayne on a trip to Charlotte. I went to Charlotte Motor Speedway in May earlier that year, because I actually had gone down there and we had met Andy when I raced in Nashville, and he invited us to go to Charlotte. I went to Charlotte, and that was where I met Wayne in the pit area, and Alex Club introduced me to Wayne, chatted with him, and that was how I got introduced to Wayne. That was several months later, once my dad had a stroke. So that was in May. Then it was, I believe, June when my dad had a stroke, and my Wayne called, and I was, at this point, admittedly, I had mentally decided, okay, I'm not going to go back racing. I was fully prepared to hang up the helmet and quit racing, and that was when Wayne called and said he was down a driver for Berlin. He had a guy, but then the driver ended up not being able to make due to personal reasons. So eventually we had fans had started a GoFundMe for me, and we went in that, and Wayne cut us a deal, and we ran the first race at Berlin, and it went pretty well. And after that I got invited to run Winchester, and it was just kind of a race by race thing, and it just turned into running the second half of the season.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we certainly hope your dad's doing a lot better now.
Doing a lot better now, fortunately.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah, but it's crazy to think how the stars can just align in a certain way, and then it can set your whole world on a new trajectory.
Yes. It very much did, but it was it was in the end it turned out all right. So I'm very in a way things ended up working out for the best despite unfortunate circumstances. And if it wasn't for Wayne and for me, it's like it taught me a lesson about relationships, and being there, shaking his hand, looking him in the eye. It was okay. That's what got me this deal. And, that's what it was. It was all about relationships, and it taught me about, through that process, how valuable relationships are. And I think that's, not only, something that helped me get an ARCA ride, but it's helped me stay in ARCA throughout, throughout the last year and a half and into this season.
Yeah. And, this season, we understand you're going full-time ARCA East racing with Fast Track Racing, Andy Hillenberg. So that's definitely a bit of a step up there. And, the competition in the ARCA and RD series this year, it definitely seems like, you've got a good shot at getting a pretty good points finish this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's we're definitely going to have very stiff competition this season, but it's kind of, we were working on this deal all throughout like midway last year. It was, some races I ended up having to start in park last year when I didn't have, most of the races last year when I didn't have sponsorship. And, we had this, talked with Andy and had this in mind, and, trying to put together a full-time East deal and basically run full races and, see how good it was we can run. And so, I'm really excited for this. And, I've had a lot of fun with it already. And, I really like working with Andy. I really like how Andy's team operates, the culture of the team. And, you really, when you have a team that truly has your back, it definitely helps you not only perform better, but it just makes you feel a lot more confident. And for me, I really like Andy as well because, in a way, he's to me like a mentor figure because he's from Indiana. But he's also made it to the Cup Series. He's run ARCA. He's an ARCA champion. He's won that Daytona twice. So he's not only someone who's been there, and not only he didn't just be there. He actually had a success. And so for me, I'm really excited to go for this opportunity, and I'm really glad that Andy's going to be spotting for me on the number 11 this coming weekend at Pensacola. So I'm really excited and really honored to be driving the 11 as well.
That's sorry, I couldn't speak there. That's awesome. That's incredible that you're getting those opportunities. And something I've always believed in is that in some way, shape, or form, things always work out in the end. Just any way, shape, or form, it always works out.
Yes, I agree. A lot of times, I think that's just how it is. And for me, it's keeping the faith and never giving up. And if you can achieve anything you set your mind to.
Amen. 100%.
Yeah, definitely. Because, it's like I was kind of at the point a couple of years ago where, probably even a year ago, I would say, where I think I was ready to hang it up, where I didn't think there was a future for me in the sport anymore. And then, my buddy Ryan Chilkuski comes up with an opportunity for a midget ride. And I also got in touch with some people in ARCA again. And that's what led to these opportunities, with Laverne Spencer and Brayton and Dane Laster. So, it's like everything from what I see is going to work out the way it's supposed to, even if you don't see it in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. You just keep moving forward and, keep your head up and have faith, and I can apply that to myself for sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah, obviously, you mentioned that, you were in Chicago for a little bit, so I can't help but ask, how intrigued are you about the Chicago street race coming up later this summer?
I think it's going to be a great opportunity for NASCAR. I feel like the Chicago street race, as someone who is formerly a resident of the Chicago area, I think it is a really cool opportunity. I will admit, I personally would have liked the race at Chicago Land Speedway better. But I'm really glad that we do have racing back in the Chicago area, and I feel like it is a great market for the sport. I'm sure some people have already made their opinions on it very, very clear. But for me, I feel like this is a great place of opportunity for the sport. I feel like this is something that, you're going to have quite a lot. This could be potential for something big in the sport and being a first street race in a very long time on the NASCAR level. And for that, I feel like it's going to be a great opportunity. And I feel like, NASCAR can hit it out the park. The ball is in their court, and I feel like this could be turned into something that can become a big annual event in the Chicago area and a big annual event for NASCAR.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about it. I think, like you said, it's a great opportunity for NASCAR. It's great for the sport to grow, to try something a little different. And, a lot of cities, from what we've been hearing, seem to be interested in it too, which is pretty cool. Like Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or for Michael and I, we would love for Cincinnati to try it because obviously we're missing racing over here with the unfortunate departure of Kentucky Speedway. But yeah, I think it's good for the sport to try something like this. And I've always wondered for the longest time growing up, I was like, I see the sports cars and the Indy cars racing on the street circuits. I'm like, when's NASCAR gonna try that? It's like the old EA Sports games when we drove on the tracks like the New York circuit. I was like, when is that ever gonna happen in real life? And we're finally gonna get a taste of what it'll look like. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to when it's on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm trying to remember, but I forgot what Twitter posted it, but I swear they posted that ARCA actually one time ran a street race in downtown Des Moines, Iowa in like 1994 or something like that. So I'm sitting here.
Let me look that up.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up too, see if maybe.
Actually, I know a bit. Charlie Kroll mentioned that a little bit about them having a street race in downtown Des Moines, Iowa. I believe it was 1990 and 1991, if I remember correctly, from Charlie's story about them running down there in the streets, and it was like, oh, this was really good, and having that. And Charlie we had this luncheon for Des Moines, Iowa for the race. Since the title sponsor of the race had some drivers there, and I happened to be one of them there. So we had that, and Charlie was kind of reminiscing about how the city was so good, and it's actually the first place I saw. We were there in I forget the name of the place. Part of it I couldn't go into because I wasn't 21, so it was like a part restaurant, part bar. It was a bar and grill. So it was a pretty nice place, and across from it was a Hy-Vee. So it was a really nice place.
Oh wow!
Yeah. I just looked it up, and it said back in 1994, ARCA ran a race on the streets of Des Moines, Iowa.
Yep.
Scott Legacy won, and this was the only event ARCA held there.
Yeah, July 3rd, 94. I pulled up the results on Racing Reference. Yeah, Scott Legacy. Frank Kimmel was second. Jimmy Spencer finished third. This was when he was driving for Junior Johnson. Bobby Boucher, Gary Bradbury, your top five in that race.
Wow, I remember Gary Bradbury. That's not a name I've heard in a while, but I remember hearing that name from from a lot of old racing videos I've watched from the 90s.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how you could discover something like, oh my gosh, I never knew that happened, Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when I first got into racing when I was a kid, I used to live in Louisville, Kentucky. And, obviously I had, already for a couple years, I've been to Kentucky Speedway a few times. And suddenly one day I'm just kind of, because I as a kid, I was just searching up all sorts of fun history and stuff like that. And then I discovered Louisville Motor Speedway, and I went, there's a racetrack in Louisville? How come I never heard of this? My dad and I actually took a weekend day. We drove out to where it was. But, I didn't know about that. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I just started looking up about where it was, what it looked like. And obviously they got old races from the Truck Series on YouTube somewhere. But funny enough, years later, one of my dad's old bosses then sent me this package. It's kind of like a care package. She just basically messaged me on Facebook and said, hey, I always knew you loved NASCAR. I got a bunch of old stuff. I'd love to give it to you if you want it. I was like, oh, that's really nice of you. Thank you. And the first thing I pulled out, a seat cushion from Louisville Motor Speedway.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Next time I'm over at your place, you got to show me that.
Yes, it's in my closet. It's in that same box. I will definitely show you. But yeah, I looked at that and I went, oh my gosh, that is so cool. Also in that, there was a lot of cool things. I know I had a die-cast of Coy Gibbs' ConAgra Pontiac from 2002, because I remember at the time Joe Gibbs used to have a partnership with ConAgra Foods, so there's a lot of good stuff in there. I definitely need to take some time to dig it out and take more of a look.
Nice. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, like, I have, like, quite a few, so I have, like, I have, like, a huge diecast car collection I've amassed over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've gotten, like, some obscure ones, like, I've gotten, like, some ones, I actually, like, recently was able to find, Andy Hillenberg's championship-winning diecast, so it was like,
Oh,
oh,
wow.
that's pretty cool. I found one, an old Racing Champions car, I believe, it was, no, it was an action diecast of, Andy Hillenberg's car. And it's like, oh, I didn't know they named those. So ever since, I've kind of been finding some old ARCA diecast recently, like online, and finding what I can. So I found like one of Andy's old cars, and then like I think I found a Jeff McClure car since he's now at Fast Track now. It's like, oh, this is some really cool stuff, and it's really cool to look and find those old things from history, because it's in a way it's part of racing history, and I like having that stuff because it reminds just to kind of relive the past in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really cool when it's really cool when it's someone you can connect with, obviously like Andy or Jeff McClure, so that's got to be really cool too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, yeah. I remember as a kid, I used to go. For anyone familiar with Louisville, Kentucky, there was the Outer Loop, and I remember there was an old NASCAR store off the Outer Loop, and if ever me and my dad were driving around there, my dad would be like, "You want to stop by the NASCAR store?" I said, "I would love that." So yeah, I could probably, if I ever go down there again, I'd love to pick out where it is. But yeah, I always loved going in there, and that's where I got some of my early diecasts, like that Looney Tunes game that Jeff Gordon never raced. Like, he practiced in it, and I'm trying to remember, I think he crashed, and he wasn't able to run the scheme because the backup didn't have the scheme or something like that. That was
Yep.
Yep. That was,
Yep, the Bugs Bunny car. Yep.
Yep. That was one of the first diecasts.
That one.
Yeah, that was funny because I didn't know about the story until years later. I went, "Oh my god, that's one of the first diecasts I ever got." That's hilarious. But yeah, gosh, there's always a story behind everything in motorsports, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah.
So
Go ahead.
something I am curious about, because obviously I met you through Brayton Laster. Like, how did you get connected with the Lasters?
Just kind of by chance, as we were there at Talladega. Yeah, we just walked up to them, unlocking the pits. I was going up and down the pit road, not pit road, garage area at Talladega. We were in the garage area at Talladega, and we needed a part, so I think I went over to Dane and Brayton and said, "Hey, do you guys need to have this part? Since we needed one." It turned out we ended up not needing it, so I did all that for nothing. But, we just sat there and kind of chatted for a while, and just kind of, by chance, just had a conversation. And I found out he was also from Indiana, and we've kind of kept in touch ever since that. So it was just kind of meeting him at Talladega is what I remember. Just having a conversation with Dane and Brayton there at Talladega, and then we kind of went back and forth, like messaging each other on Twitter, and since then, and now we've like we went out. I went down with him for the Daytona test, and I'm really we went down with him with Gateway National. So kind of met each other at Talladega, and we just kind of kept in touch ever since. So.
Nice.
And we've had pizza together at least a few times. So.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I met you and Brayton pretty much through Michael. So that was when it all started last summer. If it's okay to tell the story, because I had just gotten home from work, and Michael calls me, and I'm like, "Hey man, what's up?" So I'm not sure if you're able to come along, but I just got a deal to run a dirt late model tonight down in Ponderosa Speedway in Junction City, Kentucky. So I was like, well, I know what I'm doing tonight. So I ended up tagging along, and that's where I met Brayton and Dane, and they've it's always fun hanging out with those guys. Just great people.
Oh yeah, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and we certainly want to wish him luck this week and down in South Alabama, where he's making his super late model debut.
That's right.
Yeah, it's whole different animal there with compared to even an ARCA car, the super late. So through practice, looks like he was doing pretty good. He looks like he was getting used to the car and getting used to getting the most out of it. And we'll see. Hopefully, he does really good in the race. So
yeah, absolutely. Wishing best of luck to Brayton in that race. And of course, funny enough, if those of you listening later on, I have the Xfinity race pulled up on my laptop next to my PC here. So yeah, we're actually recording this during the Xfinity race. Of course, Truck Series race. That race was won by Christian Eckes.
Mm-hmm.
A bit of a wild one. I caught the end of that since I had to work, but yeah,
that was quite an interesting race there at the end, and Christian won for Bill McAnally. I actually got asked for Bill in an ARCA car once, so
nice.
I'm really glad for Bill to get his first ARCA win, not ARCA win, Truck Series win. Really glad they won their first truck race, and Bill McAnally is one of the nicest people I've met, and I've got nothing but nice things to say about him. So I'm really glad they were able to pull through and get their first truck win today.
Absolutely, just a well-respected person throughout the garage area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because go ahead.
No, I was just saying. Oh yeah, just agreeing with you.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting there watching the finish, and at first they were like, well, yeah, he crossed the line, but was he out in front? And he was out in front when the caution did initially come out. But I was sitting there worried at first because it made me think about the 2005 Truck Series opener Daytona when, something similar happened. Jimmy Spencer thought he won. He even pulled into victory lane just to be told, unfortunately, you were not the winner of the race. So they had to pull his truck out and pull in Bobby Hamilton's truck. So that's like, man, that's going to be really awkward if somehow, if he wasn't out in front when the caution came out. But luckily that didn't happen. Big congrats to Christian Eckes. Definitely going to be, especially too, going to be an interesting race tomorrow for the Cup Series. Seemed like there was a lot of, handling issues throughout qualifying, but I'm sure that the teams will figure this out and see what they can adjust to for tomorrow's race, because it is going to be on the chilly side too, which is kind of odd for Atlanta, even if it's March.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just saying. Oh yeah, again. So.
Yeah. But I mean, it's been interesting, especially the fact how Atlanta is now and how different the track is, and it's a miniature Daytona is my best analogy of what it is. It's a 1.5 miles, but it's a super speedway now. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely created racing that I feel like when I first watched it a year ago, I was like, I feel like this is something you would see in NR 2003. When you go in and mess with the track INI file and suddenly you got like pack racing at a track like Atlanta or something like that. So that's what it felt like at first.
A lot, yes.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, anything else left to talk about or intriguing to bring up?
I'm open to anything if you guys want. So if you want to talk about like this upcoming week or anything, anything random or completely not related to racing, I'm open to anything.
Yeah. So just to kind of go into the first thing there. So obviously we're about a week away from the ARCA East opener at forget Five Flag Speedway. Sorry, my mind went a little bit went a little blank there. So. What are you looking to get out of this weekend? And are you just looking to kind of find something you can gain on for the rest of the year?
Well, I think for this week, this coming weekend, I think it will be a good opportunity. I'm expecting around 20, 22 cars, hopefully, for the race. I think it will be, some stiff competition. You've got at least 5 to 7 manufacturer-funded cars in the race, so those guys will be obviously extremely quick. And so for me, I think if we get a top 10 finish, That will be a good result for the start of the season. And main thing is just take this opportunity, learn as much as we can, and if I would hope my goals to be the quickest fast track car and to be the best fast track car in the race, and I'd like to ideally get a top 10 out of it. So I feel like we can definitely get a top 10, and we'll see if I think we can easily be around the 8 to 10 mark, and who knows, but I'd like to try and aim for top 5 if the opportunity presents itself through some attrition. So we'll see how it goes, and I think but I would say for me personally, a top 10 is probably my goal for the race.
So, just curious, something that I kind of like to learn about other racers. Outside of racing, what are some of your other interests, some like hobbies or interests, other stuff you do?
Well, for me, it's kind of just kind of whether it's playing, iRacing, I do that a lot, or it's for me, not really much. For me, I have my foundation, so I have the Racing for Rescues initiative. So a lot of my time I do when I'm not in racing, I'm working with the Racing for Rescues and our Racing for Rescues initiative to raise funds for animal shelters, animal rescues. So that's something we do in partnership with Grateful Rescue and the American Association of Pet Parents. That's great to have those partners. And so for them, that's kind of why I do most of my free time. But I'd say just out of it, it's just, I kind of like the simple things, where it's just, relaxing, just, listening to music or something like that. That's simple, it helps me relax off the racetrack. So for me, in something like that, and of course, working out a lot and trying to stay razor focused on the goal and on race with racing in mind.
Oh, yeah. That's something I noticed is that on a lot of your cars, it seems like there's been some sort of animal charity on there. So just curious, is there like a reason behind that? Is that just kind of a cause that you just really enjoy working for?
Yeah, we have. We've always had pets in our. My mom has a pet fashion guild that she started with her own thing, where it's as pet fashion industry, which it's not my personal expertise, admittedly, but it's pet fashion, and so we've always had pets, and my mom's been kind of involved in through pet fashion. We've always had a dog almost my entire life. We have our current pug Zuzu, Zuzu LaRue, and so we've always had rescues. So instead of adoption, and so we've always had rescue animals. So Zuzu actually came. This is going to sound odd. She came actually from a Chinese meat market, quite literally. So we've gotten from you just see these places that animals come from. They're puppy mills or just things that you couldn't imagine. So for me, I've always been passionate about trying to make sure animals at least have a loving home, because there's quite a few of them that unfortunately do not have one. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's kind of been something I'm personally passionate about. And that's when through a friend of my mom's, KJ, introduced us to Pamela and her husband at Grateful Rescue, and that was when we made this partnership before 2022 to launch for the Racing for Rescues initiative, where before select races we had a trailer, and we'll fill it with we'll identify a animal shelter, and whatever that animal shelter requests, whether that's dog food, paper towels, or cleaning products is actually pretty much some of the most common, because dogs, they go number one, number two, and that stuff. So for me, we do that. We just take dog food or whatever they need to those shelters and try and help them out if we can. And our goal for that is to be the rescue for animal rescues, as I like to say. And That's how it's been something I've always had a passion for because I've always had pets and just always cared for animals. So, and it's great to work with people who share that same passion.
Absolutely. I think it's incredible you're doing that, being able to help out with animal rescue and all that. Like, I agree. Because, I mean, guys, animals got feelings too, okay? They definitely have feelings.
Yeah.
We can all agree to that for sure. We've had our pets, my dad and I had a rabbit for 10 years, and he was rescued by one of his coworkers. Someone, unfortunately, threw little Pudge was his name, somebody just threw him outside into the wilderness, and he was a baby rabbit. And my dad's coworker called my dad because we had another rabbit at the time. So it was like, hey, yeah, I see this little white rabbit out here. My dad immediately went, dude, pick it up and bring it inside, please, feed it. So eventually, April 2012, Pudge came home, and we had him for about 10 years, lived a great life, and obviously we're very thankful we had him for so long, because 10 years for a rabbit is like maybe 100 in human years. Rabbits don't typically live that long, but he was ornery, but he was a good rabbit, and very thankful, and I'm just glad that he was rescued and he was able to have a good life and a good home for a decade.
Yep. I'm great hearing that story. I remember, I think Jamie McMurray used to have a rabbit too, and he raced in NASCAR. So
yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna lie. My heart melts when I see a rabbit. I love rabbits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, obviously as an animal lover here too, I definitely appreciate that work. And if there's ever a time where you need help with something like that, let me know. I'll see if I could help out.
Yeah, same here.
Same here.
Yeah, I think it's really great to do that, because obviously there's been I work at a TV station, so I hear the news all the time, and I've heard stories recently about like how the SPCA Cincinnati will come in and they'll bring in a couple dogs and a cat and showcase animals, and obviously it's like one of the most wholesome parts of the newscast that I really enjoy, especially Saturday mornings today. Usually when I come in, that's when I do that, so they'll bring in a couple of sweet dogs and all that. But yeah, one of the biggest issues has been some of these animal rescue places have also unfortunately been a little bit beyond capacity, so obviously every little bit helps.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'm glad we got to talk about animals there. That was really cool and wholesome. So yeah, besides that, what also going back into racing, what are you looking forward to, especially for all of 2023, especially like what's coming up? What is something big that you're looking forward to, whether it's racing in general, NASCAR, or even your career?
I would say for this season, for me, I'm really looking forward to when we go to Flat Rock, because it's a return to a classic venue and that history element, because it's been such a historical ARCA track, and it returning to the schedule after 22 years off the schedule. It's like, it's like NASCAR going back to North Wilkesboro. So in a way, it's a little bit like the North Wilkesboro in a way of ARCA. So I'm really glad that we get it, and it's a quarter-mile bull ring at in a way, not like Anderson, but also in racing, it's a similar way, and I think it's it's going to be it's going to be a bit different from the norm, and I really like the fact that we'll be going there, and I think it will put on a great show, and there's just so much hype. We've got so many people likely going, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we had 30 cars for that race. So it's something that is, it's going to be a really good show, and I feel it's going to be a fun weekend to not only just have a race, but also celebrate the 70 years of ARCA racing, which, this year being their 70th anniversary, I feel is really great to have to celebrate the history of ARCA. So I feel like it's going to be something great to put on when it does happen.
Oh yeah, that's definitely one I'm looking forward to as well. I've heard a lot of hype surrounding that event, and obviously with it being in Arca's backyard, that's a huge moment for them, especially with the history they have here. So I'm definitely expecting this to be one of the bigger events of the year.
Oh, yeah. And obviously, mentioning North Wilkesboro, obviously you all saw it. Kevin Harvick running the 29 one last time in a 2001 throwback. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's really great for him to run, I think, the 29 because, it was his first number. And for me, it's like, oh, man, that's really cool. So I really like seeing that announcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, what do you think of it?
Oh, I'm excited for it. Because, I grew up watching Harvick in the 29, like I'm sure all of us probably did.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of the younger guys wouldn't know what we're talking about because it doesn't feel like it's been that long that he's been in the 4-car. I mean, it really doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, him being in the 29 still feels like yesterday.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to believe looking at it this year is his 10th season in the 4-car. It's like, man, it's been that long?
Time flies
10 years.
way too fast.
Yeah.
Way too fast. Like,
way too fast.
I swear, like, tomorrow it's going to be the first day of summer. It's going to last 3 days. Not going to be able to even have a barbecue. And then in like 2 weeks, it'll be Christmas. That's what it feels like sometimes. It's like...
Yes.
It's like, slow down. But, yeah. And it's really special. Especially with Harvick in his situation. Obviously, that paint scheme and that 29 and, all the... the pressure that was on him when he first came into the Cup Series, having to, unexpectedly take over after the unfortunate passing of Dale Earnhardt, and then coming out to Atlanta and boom, winning that very third race. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible to think he started from there and look where he is now, a obvious future Hall of Famer, one of the greatest, one of the best of our time, and it's really cool he's going to be able to run this scheme one last time.
Agreed. So it's great to see him. It'll be great to see him, run one last time. And he's someone that I feel like will be. I feel like in the current era of NASCAR is a little bit underappreciated because of just how great and how one of his longevity, and he's been able to have success for such a long period of time and stick around. And I feel like he's a little bit underappreciated in my opinion. And I'm really glad that he's going to, this is great to see him run his first win paint scheme one last time. I think it's an amazing throwback.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess while we're kind of on the topic of NASCAR news, I guess we should probably address the elephant in the room here. Hendrick Motorsports with record-setting fines and penalties here. So what do we all think of that?
Yeah, this is the fine definition of F around and find out with NASCAR's, with the penalties that NASCAR's given out. Last year we saw it with Brad Keselowski. Bam! 100-point penalty. Completely messed his season all up, especially with the transition he was having from Penske to RFK. Yeah, I mean, it's a swift kick in the butt for Hendrick for sure. Now, obviously, they may rebound much quicker with, the amount of talent they have and everything, but it's just like, wow, Yeah.
I was really shocked that all 4 cars were hit with that penalty.
Yeah.
And for me, it was definitely, when that was announced on Friday, and I remember seeing images of it on, like, there's some images of it that surfaced, I believe. It was like, oh man. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting case right now. And we'll just have to see how it turns out. But, I would say from past example, we've had, of course, RFK last year in front row and Stuart Haas in a way last year that all got 100-point penalties. So NASCAR definitely wasn't afraid to, put the hammer down when it came to this penalty. So it's it might change the complexion of the playoffs a little bit, but probably not a whole lot. But in the short term, it has definitely changed things up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's go ahead.
There's also Denny Hamlin here coming out with what I believe it was a 50-point fine and a 50-point fine and a $25,000 fine for admitting to crashing Ross Chastain. And it's like, I'm curious what your guys' thoughts of that are. Mine are, you probably shouldn't go on a podcast and just say that you wrecked somebody.
Yeah.
But, it's like I do kind of understand, how that would put NASCAR in a position where they have to act.
So I should just say all the people I've wrecked here, right? I'm kidding. I don't think I've ever wrecked someone on purpose beyond. No, I actually haven't. When I think about it, but anyway, so for me, it's, when I would say in that situation, yeah, it probably wasn't the greatest thing for him to admit publicly that, wrecking him on purpose, but I kind of feel like mainly this is, a main thing is, it's just a case of a lot of times it seems like, the going back and forth between, a consistent penalty to a kind of a consistently inconsistent penalties when it comes to, I feel like this could have been a situation where letting the drivers handle it themselves may have been a lot better. But as I think Tony Stewart put it, I feel like it should have been handled there at the racetrack. And, they didn't like something at the racetrack. It probably should have been there done the day of the race, as Tony Stewart pointed out. And so I would have to agree with that. But I definitely would say, I definitely would think I don't fully agree with the penalty, but I understand why it's being put in place.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand why it was put in place, and I agree. Not the best of ideas from Denny there to just straight up come out and admit, like, yeah, I wrecked him. Especially that, this is Hamlin and Chastain. This dates back to last summer at Gateway, and I still remember sitting there in turn one and seeing the beef that took place, because I remember I sat there and I went, my God, is NASCAR going to park Hamlin if he keeps this up? Because, man, he's mad. But, I hope at this point, it's gone on for a while, let's stop this. Let's focus on, both drivers just focus on winning races and getting to the championship for when we return to Phoenix in November. But, I mean, yeah, I totally get why NASCAR had to do that, because it's like a line's got to be drawn. It's, you just can't come out and say, yeah, I wrecked that guy. Like, no. Don't, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, it won't stop people from wrecking each other, because people have been wrecking each other since the dawn of racing. So it won't end people wrecking each other on purpose, but it definitely might serve as a small deterrent in a way. At least if you just kind of, I guess now just don't say anything publicly that you did wreck someone on purpose until after you retire. So
yeah,
just that, save it for the autobiography, I guess, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, anyway, jokes aside, it was, I think it'll be, I don't think it'll be a huge effect on Denny's season, even if he wins the appeal or loses the appeal. I don't think it will be a huge consequence overall to Denny's season as a whole at this moment of time, because it's still early in the season and there's plenty of time to make up for that. And, I don't think it's too unrealistic for him based on his last few years. And, he's won a race every year his career in Cup, bar one. So, I think he'll definitely win. I think he'll probably win his way into the playoffs.
Oh, certainly.
Oh, yeah. I'd be shocked if he didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's too good for sure. So, well, you carry on, you move on, and focus on the next one.
Yep.
That's pretty much all you can do. So, yeah. And of course, we mentioned Harvick too. I guess the big thing now is, who takes over the 4 and who does Busch end up sponsoring? Obviously, some drivers have kind of thrown their names out there. It appears Ross Chastain might be a favorite. And if so, we better get some watermelon flavored Busch. But,
Yes.
I'm kind of curious to see how that all nets out too.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be very interesting to see who takes over that car. It seems like this is kind of a unique scenario where there's no clear lead candidate. Because, like when Jeff retired, it was pretty clear that it was going to be Chase Elliott. I think it was very clear Chase Elliott was going to be replacement. When Dale Jr. retired, it was
Bowman.
going to be Alex Bowman. It was pretty much set in stone. And when Jimmy was a little bit of a question mark because it essentially ended up being Bowman in the 48, but Kyle ended up with Jimmy's crew.
Yeah.
So, kind of in a way, that was a little bit more of a question mark. But this is going to be something else different entirely on how that is. So we'll see how it is, and I think this won't be a question that won't really be solved until probably the summertime. I feel like,
Yeah.
I feel there's several drivers, really good drivers, who are, capable of being in the 4-car, and there's several people. I would say there's a short list of 5 to 10 drivers who could be a candidate for that 4-car, and I think it will. It'll trickle down, and I think a more clear lead candidates will emerge in the summer. But Ross Chastain would definitely be, if for Stewart-Haas were to sign Ross, I would say that would definitely be a huge thing for Stewart-Haas in their future to have a driver obviously as talented as Ross Chastain is. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, I know he was one of the top candidates, but I think Trackhouse ended up signing him to a multi-year extension. So I think his name's kind of out of that now. The two guys who I've heard for the most part are Cole Custer, obviously, because he's within the Stewart-Haas pipeline.
Yep.
The top name I've heard, honestly, has been John Hunter Nemechek, because it doesn't seem like there's really a spot for him at JGR or 2311 anytime soon. But he's obviously showing his talent in the Xfinity and Truck Series, and so there's a lot of demand for him right now. And so that's probably the top candidate, I would think, would be John Hunter Nemechek.
Oh, yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously he ran Cup in 2020 with front row in the 38, and hate to say it, but that's been a car that's had a different driver every year since, 2019. So, I think Nemechek at Stewart-Haas would be great. Another guy, he's kind of a wild card, but I think when it comes to free agency, his name's probably going to be mentioned quite a lot, and that's Todd Gilliland. Obviously he came in this season thinking, all right, I got a full-time gig with front row, I'm going to continue to build on things, and then suddenly, it's like he lost 6 races for Zane Smith since his sponsor wanted to do more races. So, I'm kind of curious, maybe if Todd Gilliland, even if it's not Stewart-Haas, where, he may end up.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be very interesting to see where he ends up. I would say, and definitely the other factor being with Zane on a longer deal with front row, for him, that does probably leave the door open for him to probably maybe enter a possible deal with Stewart-Haas. And then, I would say I wouldn't even rule out, maybe not 1 but 2 drivers, new drivers joining Stewart-Haas next season, because if I recall correctly, Eric's contract might run out at the end of this season as well. So you could see a new driver for the 4 and the 10, or perhaps if Ryan Preece gets moved from the 41 to the 4, you never know how it will all work out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Alex, anything else you got?
Oh, I think that's about it. We'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Seriously, Zachary, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a ton of fun.
Thank you very much.
Seriously, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to have been able to join you guys on the podcast. And, if you'd like me to come back on any other time, feel free to let me know. It was a great being with you guys today. And thank you very much. I wish you all a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. You too.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, that'll close on another edition of the Dropping the Hammer Racing Hour podcast. You can check us out on Gray Speed Productions on YouTube as well as on Spotify. Thank you guys so much for listening as always, and we will see you next time.